We're going to learn how to write a function rule given a table of ordered pairs. And we're going to use this formula right here. Output is equal to m times the input plus b. And don't worry if it looks confusing. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to use it. The first thing we're going to find is the value for the letter m. To find that, you're going to use this formula. Change in outputs divided by change in inputs. Let me show you where to get those numbers. To get the change in outputs, I'm going to look at the outputs in the table and figure out what the outputs are changing by from one to the other. In other words, from 0 to -2, I can see it decrease by 2. From -2 to -4, it also decreased by 2. And from -4 to -6, that also decreased by 2. Therefore, my change in outputs is going to be -2. So I would write down m equals -2. And now I need the change in inputs. And to get that, we do the same exact thing for the inputs. So from 1 to 2, I can see it increased by 1. From 2 to 3, it increased by 1. And from 3 to 4, that also increased by 1. Therefore, my change in inputs is +1. And the last step is to just simplify. So my value for m is going to be -2 when I divide that out. And now we have the value of m. Just so you know, if you have a table of values where the inputs are changing by the same amount and the outputs are changing by the same amount, just like we have here, it represents something called a linear function. Let me show you a picture of what I mean by a linear function. If you were to take the inputs and the outputs and put them onto the graph, you would get something like this. When input is 1, the output is 0. When the input is 2, the output is -2. When the input is 3, the output is -4. And when the input is 4, the output is -6. You can see here that all these lines are in the perfect row. That's what we mean by linear. A linear function is a straight line. I could draw a line through all 4 points. We could actually use this graph to find the value of b in our equation. If I start with this point here, if I go up 2 and left 1, I get to the next point. If I go up 2 and left 1, I get to the next point. And I keep repeating this up 2 and left 1 pattern until I get to the y-axis, which would be up 2, left 1, right here at this point here. And I can see that at that point here, the value is equal to 2. So that is the value for b. And just so you know, there's a second way to find the value of b. And you can do that by looking at the table. We already know that the inputs are changing by 1 and the outputs are changing by -2. That's going from left to right. But if I were to go backwards, in other words, like from 2 to 1, I would take away 1. So going backwards, I know that if I were to go in this direction, that means I would have to decrease it by 1. So my input would be actually 0 going backwards. And I could do the same thing going this way too. So I know that the previous one is going to be 2 more. Right? So in this direction, I would just do the opposite. I would end up adding 2 more, and that would give me to 2. And you can see that I did not mess up the pattern, because if I go from 0 to 1, it's increasing by 1. And if I go from 2 to 0, that's increasing by 2. So if you want to find the value of b, you just got to figure out what is the output when the input is 0. If you look at the table, we were trying to find out this right here. When the input is n, what is the output? So we can actually answer the question now. So the output is going to be equal to m, which we found to be -2, times the input, which in this case you can see the input is n, plus b, which is what we found earlier on the graph to be +2. Therefore, the answer that I would type in would be this here, -2 times n plus 2. Or you could simply just put -2n plus 2. And that's how you write a function rule given a table of ordered pairs.